The Galactic Council had long held dominion over vast stretches of the galaxy, each decision they made shaking entire star systems to their core. They saw themselves as the supreme authority, the rulers of life and death. Planets were pawns in their endless game of political maneuvering. But of all the planets under their control, Earth had always been considered the most insignificant. A small, barely noticeable planet, trapped in the far reaches of the galaxy, Earth had never been a threat to the Council. Its people were primitive, at least by galactic standards, and its technology far behind what the Council had grown accustomed to. Earth, to them, was a symbol of the old dying order. It wasn't worth much. Yet it was the human spirit that often sparked things the Council couldn't control. Humans had always had a certain fire in them, a desire to fight for what they believed in, no matter the odds. Over time, this spark of defiance had grown into a flame that the Council found hard to ignore. Though Earth was far from being able to challenge the might of the Council's fleet, there was a growing resistance, a rebellion that refused to bow down. The human race had begun to fight back, to make its voice heard across the galaxy. It was that voice, that challenge to their power, that angered the Galactic Council. They had long decided that Earth's defiance could not go unchecked. They would crush the rebellion, make an example of the humans, and remind the galaxy who truly held the power. Their plan was simple: eliminate the symbol of Earth's resistance. And there was no greater symbol of that resistance than a child. The child was nothing special, at least in terms of birthright. He wasn't a prince or a general or someone with any political sway. But to the rebels, he was the future. To the human people, he was a symbol of their strength, of the hope they still clung to. The child had lost his parents to the Council's forces. His family had been a part of a resistance group that the Council had destroyed. His parents were brave, and they had inspired others to take up arms and fight back. But the Council was ruthless. They had shown no mercy. And now they would make an example of the child, to remind Earth's people that no one could challenge the Council and live to see another day. The decision was made in the highest chambers of the Galactic Council. The leaders met in their grand cold halls, their faces hidden in shadows, their voices cold and calculating. They believed that by killing this child, they would destroy the spirit of rebellion on Earth, extinguish the hope that had taken root in the hearts of the people. They would snuff out the flame of defiance before it could grow into a full-blown fire. And to the Council, that was the most efficient solution. One death, one symbol gone, and the rebellion would crumble. Earth would fall back into its place as a powerless, insignificant world. As the Council made its decision, a sense of finality filled the room. There were no protests, no debates. This was the way of the galaxy. Stronger beings crushed the weak. The child's fate was sealed. The Galactic Council would show no mercy. They would not hesitate. They believed they had won. But what they failed to realize was the fire they thought they had extinguished was far from being snuffed out. The news of the child's execution spread quickly across Earth and beyond. It was broadcasted to every corner of the world, a cruel reminder of the Council's power. The human race watched in horror as the image of the child's execution was splashed across every screen. The child's death was not just a tragedy. It was a declaration of war from the Council. They had struck at the heart of Earth's spirit, taken away the one thing that symbolized hope for the oppressed. But it was also a challenge, and humans, no matter how beaten down, no matter how insignificant they appeared to be in the grand scheme of the galaxy, never took kindly to being challenged. On Earth, the reactions were swift. People cried, mourned, and cursed the Council. But there was something else that was building under the surface, a feeling of anger, of rage that no one could contain. It started as a whisper, a growing undercurrent of fury that swirled in the air. It was the kind of anger that ran deep, like a river that had been dammed for too long, and was now threatening to break free. Across cities, in homes, on the streets, people began to speak of revenge, of fighting back. The child's death was not just a loss. It was a call to action. Among the people of Earth, there was a sense that something had changed. The child's death had awakened something deep within humanity. They were no longer the helpless, passive species the Galactic Council thought them to be. They were more. They were stronger. And they were ready to show the galaxy what Earth was truly capable of. But the Council, far removed from the emotional turmoil of Earth, had no idea of what they had set in motion. To them, this was simply a small, insignificant moment, another day in the vastness of the galaxy. Another victory. They thought the rebellion would burn out on its own, that the people would eventually tire and return to their old, obedient selves. They didn't understand that the people of Earth were different from the other species they had dominated. They didn't understand that the people of Earth had a fire inside them that couldn't be easily extinguished. In the quiet corners of Earth, in the shadows of forgotten places, a different kind of power was beginning to stir. Hidden deep beneath the surface of the planet was something far older than the Council had ever anticipated. Something the people of Earth had long forgotten, but which was now waking up in response to the injustice, the cruelty, the murder of the child. The Galactic Council believed they had taken everything from Earth, but they were wrong. They hadn't taken the one thing that truly mattered, the soul of Earth, and soon they would learn that the one thing they had underestimated was the very thing that would lead to their downfall. As the child's death rippled across the galaxy, a whisper spread among those who still believed in Earth's power. It wasn't just a whisper anymore. It was a roar. Earth was not finished. It was just beginning. The Council's victory would be short-lived, and Earth would soon show them the true meaning of defiance. The Galactic Council might have thought they had won, but in reality, they had set in motion something far greater than they could ever have imagined. The days following the child's execution were tense on Earth. The grief was palpable, but beneath the sadness, there was something else, something darker, more intense, like a storm gathering on the horizon. People could no longer ignore the truth. The Galactic Council wasn't just an oppressive force. It was a threat to their very existence. For years, Earth had lived under the shadow of the Council's power, but this moment, this murder of an innocent child, had ignited something inside the hearts of humanity. It had awakened a sense of urgency, a need to fight back. The rebellion had always been there, a quiet murmur in the background, but now it was growing louder, fiercer, and more determined than ever. It didn't take long for groups of resistance fighters to form, each one more committed than the last. They had lost their fear. Earth's people had always been divided in the past, their differences holding them back. But the execution united them. People who had once lived their lives without much care for what happened in the galaxy were now speaking out, ready to stand up to the Council. The anger was overwhelming. It spread like wildfire through every corner of Earth, from the towering cities to the quiet countryside. Every broadcast, every piece of news that detailed the child's death only fueled the flames further. The Council had made a terrible mistake. Far above Earth, the Galactic Council remained blissfully unaware of the storm they had unleashed. The execution was part of their larger plan to keep all rebellious systems under control, to show that no one was above their rule. But the death of the child was different. It wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a symbol. And that symbol was about to turn into a rallying cry for an entire planet. The Council's leaders had no idea that they had pushed humanity to the brink of war. They thought they could break Earth, crush the resistance with a single act of terror, but they were wrong. Back on Earth, in the dimly lit underground bunkers, the leaders of the rebellion gathered. They knew the Council's power was vast, their fleet nearly unbeatable. But they also knew something the Council did not. Earth was not without its own secrets. There was technology buried beneath the surface of the planet. Ancient technology, left behind by a civilization long before humanity had risen to power. No one knew exactly what lay hidden beneath Earth's crust, but the rebels had found traces, clues, signs that something massive, something beyond their understanding, was waiting to be unlocked. The most senior members of the rebellion had always suspected that Earth held a secret. For decades, they had heard whispers of an ancient fleet, a powerful weapon from Earth's distant past. But those were just stories, myths passed down through generations. It was hard to believe that such a fleet, one capable of challenging the might of the Galactic Council, could still exist. The Council had controlled the galaxy for so long that it was almost impossible to imagine any force strong enough to stand against them. But the rebellion had no choice but to believe. The child's death had changed everything. It had reminded them that Earth wasn't as powerless as they had once thought. As they gathered in the command center, the leader of the rebellion, a fierce woman known as Captain Mara, spoke with an intensity that none of her soldiers had ever seen before. The time has come. We've been waiting for this moment, and now we must act. We can't let the Council think they've won. We need to find that fleet. It's the only way we can fight back. The room was silent for a moment. Everyone knew what she was asking. To risk everything, to awaken something long buried. But there was no other choice. Earth was on the brink of destruction, and if they didn't take action soon, the Galactic Council would wipe them out without a second thought. Mara's voice broke the silence. We've been preparing for this. We've found the location of the fleet. It's deep beneath the planet's surface, hidden for centuries. It's time to bring it to life. The group stood, their faces set with determination. This was no longer about survival. This was about revenge. This was about showing the Galactic Council that Earth would not bow down, that Earth would never be silenced. The rebels knew that once they initiated the ancient fleet, there would be no going back. The Council's reaction would be swift, and it would be brutal. But they also knew this: if they didn't act, they would lose everything. The next few days were filled with preparation. The rebellion used every resource they had, every scrap of information they had gathered over the years. They dug deep into the Earth, accessing hidden tunnels, ancient facilities, and forgotten chambers that had long been sealed off. The further they dug, the more they uncovered, until finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they found it. The fleet was real. It was massive. Thousands of ships, some as large as cities, others smaller, but all equipped with unimaginable weapons. The ships were unlike anything Earth's technology had ever produced. Their designs were sleek, their surfaces shimmering with a mysterious energy. They looked like something from a forgotten age, as though they had been waiting for centuries for someone to wake them. And now that someone was here, the fleet was awakening. But even as the fleet came to life, the danger grew. The Galactic Council, ever vigilant, had noticed the shift in Earth's activity. They knew something was happening. Their spies had reported strange energy readings coming from Earth's surface, and the Council's top generals feared the worst. Earth, it seemed, was no longer the helpless, defenseless planet they had once thought it to be. In the darkened halls of the Galactic Council's headquarters, a meeting was called. The Council's leaders gathered, their faces twisted with concern. "What is Earth doing?" one of them asked. "We've been receiving reports of strange energy surges. They've unlocked something." Another leader spoke up, his voice cold and calculating. "It's impossible. Earth doesn't have the resources or technology to do this. They can't be awakening an ancient fleet. That's just a legend." But the fear was there, hidden beneath the surface. Even the Council's most powerful leaders knew that if Earth had truly discovered this fleet, it would change everything. The balance of power in the galaxy would shift, and the Council would not allow that to happen. "They must be stopped," one of the leaders said. "Send the fleet. We'll crush them before they can even launch a single ship." But the Council had underestimated Earth's determination. They had underestimated the power of the human spirit. And as their fleet set course for Earth, the rebellion's fleet, Earth's ancient fleet, was ready. Earth had made its choice. The child's death had been the catalyst. But now Earth was about to make the Galactic Council regret ever underestimating them. The battle for the galaxy was about to begin. The storm that had been brewing on Earth was about to collide with the might of the Galactic Council. And no one, least of all the Council, could predict the outcome. As the Galactic Council's fleet began its march toward Earth, the tension across the galaxy was almost unbearable. The Council, confident in its superiority, believed the battle would be swift. They had underestimated the human race, something that no one had dared do for centuries. The human spirit, a force they had brushed aside for so long, was now on the brink of unleashing something they could not possibly imagine. On Earth, preparations for the imminent battle were moving at a feverish pace. The underground bunkers were filled with activity. Soldiers, engineers, and scientists worked tirelessly to bring the ancient fleet to life, racing against time. The rebellion's leaders knew they had only one chance to strike at the heart of the Galactic Council, and they had to make it count. Captain Murrah stood at the head of the operations, watching the monitors with an intensity that made the air crackle with tension. "Everything is in place," said one of her commanders, his voice heavy with both fear and anticipation. "The fleet is ready to launch. We can't delay any longer." Mara nodded, her face hard. She had known from the beginning that this moment would come, but now that it was here, the weight of responsibility was heavy. They were about to wake up a force from Earth's forgotten past, a force that had been lying dormant for centuries. They didn't fully understand it, but they knew it was powerful enough to change the fate of the entire planet. "Let's make sure they never forget who we are," Mara said firmly, her voice steady. The ancient fleet had been built long before Earth had even known it would need such power. The ships, each massive and beautiful in their design, had been created by an advanced civilization that had long since disappeared, leaving only their creations behind. The technology was so far beyond anything Earth had developed. It was like a dream come true, a dream that had now turned into a weapon. For years, the rebellion had scored Earth's history, digging through ruins, deciphering ancient texts, and finding pieces of a puzzle that no one had realized was there. They had discovered that Earth's ancient inhabitants were not just simple people. They had been conquerors, explorers, and innovators, with knowledge that could rival even the most advanced galactic civilizations. The fleet they had left behind was a testament to their strength, and now it was Earth's last hope. As the fleet's massive engines roared to life, the ground shook beneath the command center. The lights flickered for a moment, and then everything steadied. A sense of awe and fear filled the air. Earth was no longer a helpless planet, a footnote in the Council's empire. It was awakening something that could bring the galaxy to its knees. Captain Mara watched as the first ship of the fleet lifted off from the Earth's surface, its sleek form cutting through the atmosphere like a knife through butter. More ships followed, rising from the depths of the planet, their engines burning bright as they ascended into the sky. The sight was nothing short of breathtaking, and for a moment, it felt like Earth had been reborn. "We're not alone," Mara whispered to herself. But even as she said those words, she knew that they would soon face an unstoppable force in the form of the Galactic Council. The fleet they had just awakened was powerful, but would it be enough? Meanwhile, aboard the Council's flagship, the leaders of the Galactic Council sat at the command table, their faces filled with grim determination. They had received reports of Earth's strange activity, and their worst fears were now realized. The rebels had found the fleet. They had awakened it. The Council's most powerful warships were now heading toward Earth, their weapons primed and ready. "We can't let this go on any longer," one of the leaders said, his voice cold. "Destroy Earth's fleet before they can even launch a counterattack. We need to make an example of them." The Council's military leader, General Varen, nodded in agreement. "We'll crush them. Their ancient fleet won't stand a chance against our forces." The Council's fleet was massive, its warships bristling with advanced weapons and shields. They had superior numbers, better technology, and a ruthless determination to wipe out Earth's defiance once and for all. But General Varen's confidence was not shared by everyone. A few members of the Council's inner circle exchanged worried glances. They had heard the rumors, the whispers of the fleet that Earth had uncovered, and though they were reluctant to admit it, They feared that this battle might not be as easy as they thought. Back on Earth, the rebellion's fleet continued to rise, cutting through the clouds, their engines blazing as they made their way toward the stars. Captain Mara's heart pounded in her chest as she watched the ships ascend. It felt like the planet itself was holding its breath, waiting for the moment when everything would change. As the fleet moved closer to the edge of Earth's atmosphere, a sudden alarm blared through the command center. Mara's eyes darted to the screen in front of her, and her pulse quickened. The Galactic Council's fleet was already on the move, heading straight for Earth. "We don't have much time," Mara said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Prepare for battle. Make sure the fleet is ready to engage." The battle for Earth was about to begin. Above them, the Council's fleet loomed, its warships massive and intimidating. The Council had sent everything they had to crush the rebellion before it could even make its first move. The ships in Earth's ancient fleet, though powerful, were outnumbered. They didn't have the luxury of time to learn how to fully utilize the ship's full potential. They would have to rely on their instincts, their determination, and their will to survive. The first wave of Council ships arrived in Earth's orbit. The space above Earth was filled with the sounds of battle, the hum of energy shields, the booming blasts of laser cannons, and the terrifying crackle of weapons fire. The Council's ships opened fire, their massive weapons targeting Earth's ancient fleet with relentless precision. But to the Council's surprise, Earth's fleet did not fall easily. The first blast fired at one of the ancient ships hit its shield, but the ship didn't flinch. The energy shields held, and the ship retaliated with a pulse of energy that sent one of the Council's ships spiraling into space. The shockwave from the blast rippled through the battlefield, and the rest of the Council's ships paused for a moment, realizing that Earth was not as defenseless as they had thought. "Impossible," General Varen muttered, watching the unfolding battle. "Their fleet, it's stronger than we anticipated." But the Council was not one to retreat. They had the numbers, and they had the firepower. They would win. But as the battle raged on, there was one thing that the Council couldn't account for: the human will to survive, the relentless drive to protect what was theirs. Earth was fighting with everything it had, and it would not surrender. The war for Earth had begun, and both sides knew that only one would emerge victorious. As the ships collided in space, a new chapter in the galaxy's history was being written. No one knew how it would end, but the stakes were higher than ever. The fate of Earth, and perhaps the future of the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. The battle in space raged on, a chaotic clash of energy blasts, missiles, and ships tearing through the heavens. Earth's ancient fleet, now fully operational, unleashed its power in retaliation against the overwhelming might of the Galactic Council. Each ship of Earth's fleet moved with a grace that belied its immense size, gliding through space as though it had been built for this very moment. The hum of their engines filled the airwaves, a reminder of the ancient power now reawakened. The sheer scale of the conflict was mind-boggling. With thousands of ships locked in combat above the Earth, the distant planet below them a silent witness to the destruction unfolding in its orbit. Captain Mara stood at the command center, her eyes fixed on the holographic display in front of her, watching the battle unfold with steely resolve. The rebellion's ships, though fewer in number, fought with a ferocity that caught the Council's forces off guard. Earth's fleet was more advanced than the Council had ever imagined. The Council's generals had always dismissed the idea that Earth had any true weapons of war capable of challenging their dominance. But now, as their ships fell one by one to the relentless assault from the ancient fleet, they began to realize just how wrong they had been. "We're holding our ground, but not for long," Mara muttered under her breath. The Council's fleet had superior numbers, and as much as Earth's ships fought back, it was only a matter of time before they would be overwhelmed. "We can't let them break through," one of her commanders said urgently, his voice strained. "If they push past us, they'll get to Earth. They'll destroy everything." Mara nodded, her face grim. "I know. We need to keep them occupied long enough to give the ground forces time to prepare. We need Earth's defenses operational." Despite the incredible power of the fleet, the Council's forces were relentless. Their warships, equipped with advanced weaponry and shields, unleashed wave after wave of laser fire, targeting Earth's ships and blasting them from existence. But each time a ship fell, another took its place, rising from the depths of Earth's underground hangars and launching itself into space. The ancient fleet was not just a weapon of war. It was a symbol, a manifestation of humanity's will to fight back. On board the flagship of the Galactic Council, General Varen paced in frustration as his fleet engaged Earth's ships. His face, usually calm and composed, now betrayed a rare hint of unease. The battle was supposed to be over by now. The sheer power of the Council's fleet should have crushed the rebellion with little effort. But Earth's ancient ships, once thought to be nothing more than a myth, were proving to be a formidable force. "Sir," one of his subordinates spoke up, breaking the tense silence. "We've sustained significant damage. We need reinforcements." Varen shot him a cold glance. "We're not retreating. Push forward. We will break them." The Council's warships continued their relentless assault, but Earth's fleet wasn't done yet. Every move they made, every counterattack, showed just how much they had learned in the past few days. The ship's ancient weapons fired with pinpoint accuracy, sending shockwaves through the enemy fleet, and Earth's fighters darted in and out of the chaos, striking at weak points in the Council's lines. The battle was far from over, but the momentum was slowly beginning to shift. Back on Earth, in the heart of the rebellion's command center, a new problem was unfolding. The ground forces had been preparing for a potential invasion, but the Council's fleet had been so focused on the space battle that they had underestimated Earth's ability to defend itself. Hidden in the mountains, deep within the planet's most secure military bases, Earth had its own secret weapons, weaponry that had long been kept out of the Council's reach. In the wake of the child's death, these underground facilities had been activated, and now Earth's ground forces were taking the fight directly to the enemy. Armed with advanced armor, high-tech weapons, and a fierce determination to protect their planet, the human forces began launching attacks against the Council's ground units. They moved swiftly, in guerrilla-style tactics, striking their enemies from unexpected places and fading back into the shadows. The Galactic Council's ground troops, caught off guard by the fierce resistance, began to panic. They had expected Earth to fall to their superior technology and overwhelming numbers, but the humans were fighting with a desperation that the Council had not anticipated. Every inch of ground they gained seemed to come at a cost, with Earth's forces launching ambushes and using the planet's terrain to their advantage. The Council's soldiers began to doubt themselves, unsure if they could withstand the relentless resistance from the humans. On the front lines, a young soldier named Lieutenant Solera stood among the rebellion's ranks, her heart pounding with every shot she fired. She had lost family to the Council's forces, and now, with every fallen Council soldier, she felt a sense of justice, of vengeance. But there was something deeper in her heart, a sense of purpose. This was no longer just about revenge. This was about saving her home, saving humanity from being erased from the galaxy. "We've got them on the run," one of her comrades shouted, his voice filled with excitement. Solera looked up at the distant mountains where the Council's forces had set up their stronghold. They had come far, but there was still a long way to go before victory was secured. The Council had underestimated Earth's resolve. They had believed that they could conquer and destroy without consequence. But now, Earth had proven that it would not go down quietly. Back in space, the battle had reached its peak. The Galactic Council's fleet was starting to lose ships at an alarming rate. General Varen watched in disbelief as Earth's fleet tore through their lines, each blast from Earth's ancient ships sending shockwaves across the battlefield. The situation was spiraling out of control. The Council's warships were becoming scattered, vulnerable. The rebellion was winning. "Pull back," Varen finally ordered, his voice filled with frustration. We need to regroup. Earth's fleet is too strong. We've underestimated them. The retreat was chaotic. The Council's ships, once so confident in their superiority, were now running for their lives. Earth's fleet pursued them, not out of vengeance but out of necessity. They had to ensure that the Council didn't regroup, that they didn't return with even greater force. As the last of the Council's warships flowed into the depths of space, Earth's ships remained, victorious but battered. The war was far from over, but this battle was won. As the final blast of the battle echoed through the vacuum of space, Captain Murrah stood at the helm of the flagship, staring at the fleet of Earth's ships that had survived. The moment they had all fought for had come, but the price had been steep. Many lives had been lost. The fleet had taken heavy damage. But the Council had been beaten back, and for the first time in centuries, Earth had taken its place as a force to be reckoned with in the galaxy. Mara took a deep breath, her heart heavy with the weight of what had just transpired. "This is just the beginning," she said quietly to herself. The battle for Earth's survival had been won, but the war was far from over. The Galactic Council would not rest, and neither would Earth. The Resistance, now stronger than ever, had shown the galaxy that Earth could not, and would not, be crushed. The story of humanity's defiance was only beginning. The dust of battle began to settle, but the tension in space remained thick, almost suffocating. The echoes of the conflict still reverberated through the void, the remnants of ships and debris scattered across the once quiet expanse around Earth. The Galactic Council had been forced to retreat, but their retreat was not the end of the story. Earth had won this battle, but the Council had not yet given up, and their thirst for control was far from quenched. The ancient fleet of Earth, battered but unbowed, hovered in the void, silent and powerful. As the last of the Council's warships disappeared into the depths of space, Captain Murrah stood at the command deck, her hands gripping the railing. Her eyes, once fierce and full of determination, now carried a hint of something else, a quiet sorrow for the comrades who had fallen, for the lives lost in this struggle. But there was no time to mourn. The victory, though hard-earned, was only temporary. "We can't afford to celebrate yet," Mara said quietly to her first officer, Lieutenant Rook, who stood beside her. "We need to regroup, reinforce the fleet, and prepare for whatever comes next. The Council will be back, and when they return, they'll come with everything they have." Rook nodded, his face grim. "Understood, Captain. We've already begun rerouting reinforcements from Earth's surface. We'll have the fleet fully operational in a few hours." Merritt turned her gaze to the holographic map displayed in front of them. The Council's fleet had retreated to a distant sector of the galaxy, but they would not stay there for long. The power of the rebellion, while a shocking blow to the Council, had only begun to stir the hornet's nest. Mara knew this wasn't just about Earth anymore. It was about sending a message to the entire galaxy. The days of unchecked tyranny were over. But that came with its own dangers. "Captain," Rook added, "we've intercepted a transmission from the Council. They're assembling a second, much larger fleet. They're bringing in reinforcements from every corner of the galaxy. We need to prepare for the worst." Mara's heart sank at the news, but she knew there was no time to dwell on it. The war had only just begun. The Council had underestimated Earth's resolve once before, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. This time, Earth would stand firm. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the rebellion's leadership had already begun to plan for the next phase. Every city, every military base, every resistance group was now a part of the larger effort to defend Earth against the Council's inevitable return. Earth had found its strength not in numbers, but in its unity. The loss of the child had sparked a fire, and that fire was now a blazing inferno that could not be put out. Across the planet, the people of Earth, soldiers, scientists, civilians, and engineers, were working together to reinforce their defenses and prepare for the next great battle. In a hidden facility deep underground, a group of Earth's top scientists and engineers huddled around a massive console. Dr. Lucian Hale, one of the lead scientists behind Earth's ancient fleet, worked tirelessly, analyzing data from the battle and looking for weaknesses in the Council's tactics. Though Earth had come out victorious in the first skirmish, they had barely scratched the surface of the Council's full capabilities. Captain Mara was right, Dr. Hale muttered to himself as he studied the data. The Council is not going to rest. They'll come back stronger, smarter, and more prepared. But we have something they don't. Surprise. He smiled darkly to himself, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. In that moment, he understood something that had eluded him before. Earth wasn't just defending its territory, it was fighting for its very survival. Every new discovery, every piece of technology, was another lifeline. If they could unlock the full potential of Earth's ancient fleet, they might have a chance of winning this war. But it would take time. And time was something they didn't have much of. Back in space, the rebellion's fleet had made its way to the far reaches of the galaxy, far enough from Earth's atmosphere to gather strength and prepare for the Council's inevitable counterattack. The crew worked in quiet determination, every member focused on their duties. The tension was almost palpable, but there was also a sense of unity, of purpose. These ships weren't just made for war. They were a symbol of defiance. As the days passed, Earth's fleet began to regroup, strengthened by new reinforcements and repaired ships. Captain Mara knew they had a limited window before the Council's second fleet arrived, and she made the decision to strike first. "It's time we take the fight to them," Mara said, her voice steady as she addressed her crew. "We'll hit them while they're still regrouping. We know they're coming, and we need to keep them off balance. We'll attack their supply lines, their weak points. We'll make sure they know that Earth isn't just some planet they can walk over." The crew murmured in agreement, their faces set with determination. They had seen what the Council was capable of, and they had no intention of going down quietly. Earth's fleet was ready to strike. Meanwhile, in the command center of the Galactic Council's flagship, General Varen paced restlessly. The retreat had been a humiliation, a bitter reminder that even the mighty Council could fall. His orders were clear. Earth must be destroyed, and its fleet neutralized before it could pose a true threat. But now, there was another complication. Earth had a weapon, an ancient fleet, and it was only a matter of time before that weapon was fully unlocked. "General, we've identified Earth's location," one of his aides reported. "Their fleet is regrouping in the Perseus sector, preparing for an offensive." Varen clenched his fists. "They think they can take us by surprise again. We won't be caught off guard this time. Prepare the fleet. We'll crush them, once and for all." Despite his anger, Varen couldn't help but feel the growing unease within him. Earth's defiance had shaken the foundations of the Council's power, and the people of Earth were no longer the weak, subjugated species they once were. They had awakened something ancient, something the Council had never anticipated. And that was their greatest mistake. As both sides prepared for the next phase of the war, the stakes couldn't have been higher. The battle for Earth's survival and the fate of the galaxy rested in the balance. The war had only just begun, and no one, not even the Galactic Council, could predict the outcome. But one thing was certain: Earth would not go down without a fight. The war had now entered a new phase, one that neither side could afford to lose. Earth's ancient fleet, once thought to be nothing more than a myth, was now the planet's only hope. Though their victory in the initial battle had been hard-earned, the Galactic Council's retreat was just the beginning of a much larger conflict. The Council's forces had regrouped and were preparing to launch their second assault, one that would come with even greater strength and force. Earth had won the first battle, but the war was far from over. Captain Mara stood before the main holographic display in the heart of the fleet's flagship, watching as the fleet of Earth's ancient ships gathered in the cold silence of space. The sheer size of the fleet was a testament to humanity's newfound resolve. But Mara knew that no matter how powerful they were still outnumbered. The Council would return, and they would come back stronger. Earth had bought itself some time, but time was rapidly running out. The crew had worked tirelessly over the past few days, repairing and refueling the ships, while also trying to unlock the full potential of Earth's ancient fleet. The fleet's technology was powerful, but it was also unfamiliar to most of Earth's engineers and officers. Still, every ship was now operational, and every crew member knew what they were fighting for: their homes, their families, their very existence. "Captain, we've detected movement," said Lieutenant Rook, his voice filled with urgency. "The Council's fleet is on the move. They're coming back." Mara's face hardened. "I knew they wouldn't stay away for long. Prepare the fleet for departure. We need to be ready." The room fell silent as the crew worked with swift efficiency. The stakes had never been higher. The next few hours would determine Earth's future. As Earth's fleet made its way to the farthest reaches of space, far from the prying eyes of the Galactic Council, the rebellion's commanders gathered for a final briefing. The map of the galaxy displayed in front of them showed the vast distances between Earth and the enemy forces, but it also showed a narrow, almost imperceptible path to victory. The Galactic Council's next move would be their most dangerous yet, and it was up to Earth's leaders to stop them before they could bring about the destruction of the planet. "We've been handed an advantage," Captain Mara began, her voice steady but intense. "The Council is coming in full force, but we've learned a lot since the first battle. We know their tactics, their weaknesses, and we're going to use that to our advantage. It's time to hit them hard and fast." Lieutenant Rook stepped forward, his face focused as he addressed the commanders. "We have multiple strike teams positioned on key locations throughout the galaxy. Our goal is to disrupt their supply lines and weaken their forces before they even reach Earth. We can't afford to let them regroup. We strike now before they have a chance to recover." "Agreed," Mara said, turning to the rest of the commanders. "This is our chance to deliver a decisive blow. We'll draw the Council in, force them to spread their resources thin, and then strike when they least expect it." The room hummed with anticipation. The rebellion was small in numbers, but they were united by a singular purpose. They had fought for Earth's survival before, and now, with the full force of the ancient fleet behind them, they would fight once more. Back on Earth, the situation was just as tense. The planet's surface was alive with activity as soldiers, engineers, and civilians worked together in an unprecedented show of unity. The rebellion's underground bases had become hubs of activity, and every available person was mobilized to support the war effort. Earth was ready for whatever the Council would throw at it, but there was a feeling in the air, an unspoken understanding, that the battle for Earth's survival would be decided not by technology or sheer numbers, but by willpower. In the deep, hidden bunkers beneath the surface of Earth, Dr. Lucian Hale and his team of scientists had made a breakthrough. After weeks of studying the ancient fleet's technology, they had managed to unlock a crucial piece of the puzzle, a weapon hidden within the heart of the fleet. This weapon, capable of disrupting the Council's advanced shields, could turn the tide of the war if used correctly. Hale stood before the massive console, his fingers dancing over the controls as he analyzed the data. The weapon was powerful, but it was also volatile. If they used it too soon, it could backfire, destroying their own fleet. But if they used it at the right moment, it could change the entire course of the battle. It was a risk, but one they had no choice but to take. "We'll need to coordinate with the fleet," Hale said, turning to his assistant. "The weapon is ready, but it has to be deployed at the perfect moment. We'll only have one shot at this." Above Earth, the first signs of the Council's second fleet began to appear, massive warships emerging from the depths of space, like dark, foreboding shadows. The enemy was arriving in full force, their ships bristling with weapons and shields. It was a sight that would have terrified any other planet, but not Earth. Earth had faced the worst and survived, and now they would face the Council's wrath head-on. The Galactic Council had sent everything they had, an entire fleet of ships, more than double the size of the first assault. Their warships glided through space like an unstoppable tide, ready to crush anything in their path. The Council's generals, sitting aboard their flagship, believed that this time, Earth would fall for good. "We will not leave this system until Earth is destroyed," General Varen declared coldly. "This is the final step. Annihilate them." The Council's ships began their descent toward Earth, weapons primed and shields activated. But Earth's fleet, though outnumbered, was not about to back down. The ancient ships surged forward to meet them, their engines glowing with power and their weapons charged. A battle, larger and more violent than any Earth had ever seen, was about to unfold. Mara's voice came over the intercom, clear and commanding. "All ships, prepare to engage. This is it. We fight for Earth." The silence of space was shattered by the roar of battle. Energy blasts and missiles streaked across the sky as the two fleets collided. The shockwaves from the impact could be felt even on Earth's surface. It was a clash of titans, a fight for survival. But just as the Council's fleet thought they were in control, something unexpected happened. The ancient fleet's secret weapon, the one Dr. Hale and his team had unlocked, activated. A brilliant pulse of energy shot through the battle, hitting the Council's ships with a devastating force. The first wave of enemy warships faltered, their shields failing under the intensity of the blast. The moment the weapon was unleashed, Earth's ships dove in, targeting the weak points left behind by the destruction. The tides of war had begun to turn, but Earth's victory was still uncertain. The Council would not give up easily, and they still had more than enough firepower to destroy the rebellion. But for the first time in the war, the Council was on the back foot. The battle for Earth's survival was no longer about superior technology. It was about the spirit of the human race and the power of defiance. As the battle raged on, Mara's voice echoed in the comms, filled with resolve. "This is Earth's fight. We will not fall." The war was far from over, but the outcome of this battle was clear. Earth had struck a blow to the Galactic Council, and the galaxy would never be the same. The clash of ships echoed across the void of space, each blast of energy sending ripples through the battle-scarred battlefield. Earth's fleet, now emboldened by their earlier victory, was engaged in a brutal struggle with the Galactic Council's forces. The Council had not expected such fierce resistance from Earth. They had assumed that after their initial retreat, the humans would crumble under the weight of their superior numbers. But Earth was not going down quietly. Every ship in the ancient fleet fought with a fury that surprised even the Council's most seasoned generals. On the bridge of Earth's flagship, Captain Mara stood, her eyes fixed on the holographic map that displayed the ongoing battle. Her mind raced with calculations and strategies, each decision weighing heavily on her shoulders. The Council's fleet had regrouped quickly, but they had underestimated Earth's ability to adapt and strike back. "Captain, they're advancing on our left flank," Lieutenant Rook reported, his voice tense as he monitored the battle's progress. "They're pushing harder than before, trying to break our lines." Mara's jaw tightened as she surveyed the map. The Council was indeed coming at them with renewed intensity, their ships converging on Earth's fleet in a bid to break through the defensive lines and reach the planet below. If the Council succeeded, Earth's defenses would be obliterated in minutes. "Hold the line," Mara commanded, her voice firm. "We're not letting them through. All ships, focus fire on their lead ships. We'll disrupt their formation and force them into a retreat." The battle intensified, the void filled with the roar of lasers and the thundering impacts of missiles. Earth's fleet fought with everything they had, their ships moving with a precision that belied their ancient design. The Council's forces, though overwhelming in number, were struggling to keep up with the relentless assault. Despite the fierce resistance, the Council was relentless. General Varen, aboard his flagship, watched with growing frustration as his forces failed to break through Earth's lines. His fleet was larger, more advanced, and yet the humans seemed to have a surprising advantage, an unyielding spirit that kept them fighting even in the face of certain annihilation. "This is taking too long," Varen muttered to his commanders, his patience wearing thin. "Push forward, at all costs. We will break them." But even as Varen issued his orders, a dark realization began to set in. The more the battle raged on, the more the Council's forces were stretched thin. Earth's ships, despite being fewer in number, had the home advantage. They knew their territory, their weapons, and their tactics far better than the Council. And now, with the surprise element of their ancient fleet, the balance was slowly tipping in Earth's favor. On Earth, the situation was no less dire. The rebellion's leadership, still coordinating the war effort from underground bunkers, could only watch as the battle unfolded in the skies above. The technology they had unlocked from their ancient fleet was more powerful than they had ever imagined, but they couldn't afford to rely solely on that. Earth's survival depended on how quickly they could adapt, how swiftly they could shift the tide of battle. In one of Earth's command centers, Dr. Lucian Hale and his team of scientists were busy analyzing the data streaming in from the battle. Their job was to ensure the weapon they had uncovered in the fleet's systems would continue to function properly. The ancient weapon was capable of disabling the Council's advanced shields, but it was far from perfect. They had to keep refining it in real time, making adjustments based on the ever-changing dynamics of the battle. "We need to release another pulse," Dr. Hale said urgently, his eyes fixed on the blinking screens in front of him. "The Council's fleet is regenerating their shields faster than we can break through them." One of his assistants nodded and began entering commands into the console, but they both knew the risks. The weapon, though powerful, was unpredictable. One wrong move could destroy everything. Meanwhile, in the heart of the battle, Captain Mara was fighting her own war. With every passing minute, the pressure increased. The Council's fleet was relentless, their tactics more refined than before. But Earth's fleet had something the Council could never understand: the will to survive. The rebellion wasn't just a group of fighters. They were a united force, driven by the need to protect their planet and their future. Mara watched the tactical readout, her fingers clenched around the console. "Prepare to activate the ancient weapon again," she ordered. "We need to break their shields once and for all." Rook, standing next to her, looked at her with concern. "Are you sure, Captain? If we miscalculate this, we don't have a choice." Mara cut him off, her voice steady. "The longer we wait, the stronger they become. We've got one shot at this. If we don't take it now, we may never get another chance." The decision was made. Earth's fleet would push all its ships into one final gamble, using the full power of the ancient weapon to disable the Council's forces before they could regroup. It was risky, it was dangerous, but it was their only hope. The order was given, and the ancient weapon activated again. A pulse of brilliant energy erupted from the heart of the fleet, shooting out in all directions. The shockwave hit the first wave of the Council's warships, causing their shields to flicker and fail. One by one, the Council's ships began to falter, their shields collapsing under the immense force of the weapon. Earth's fleet immediately surged forward, exploiting the breach in the enemy's defenses. "Now," Mara shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos of the battle. "Push forward. Full offensive." The tide of the battle shifted in an instant. The Council's warships, vulnerable without their shields, were now easy targets. Earth's ships tore through the enemy's lines with deadly precision, sending explosions rippling through the void. For the first time since the war began, the Council's forces were on the defensive. But the Council would not give up easily. As their ships began to falter, General Varen made a final desperate decision. "Retreat," he ordered, his voice booming over the comms. "Regroup at the designated coordinates. We'll fight another day." It was a bitter retreat, but the Council had no other choice. Their fleet, once so formidable, had been shattered by the power of Earth's ancient weapon. The remaining ships turned and flowed into the distant reaches of space, leaving behind a trail of destruction. The battle for Earth's survival was not over, but in this moment, victory was in sight. The rebellion had scored a major triumph, and for the first time, they felt a glimmer of hope. Back on Earth, the news spread quickly. The Council had been beaten back. The people celebrated, their spirits lifted by the knowledge that Earth had survived another day. But the victory was bittersweet. Captain Mara and her crew knew that the war was far from won. The Galactic Council would return, and they would be stronger, more vengeful than ever before. But for now, Earth had won, and the galaxy would never forget the power of humanity's will to survive. Mara looked out into the vastness of space, her thoughts heavy but resolute. This was just the beginning. Earth had proven that it could fight, that it could stand against the might of the Galactic Council. And that, she knew, was the first step toward true freedom. "We'll be ready," she said softly to herself. "We'll be ready for whatever comes next."